Imagine for a second that your family tree isn't just a list of names on a dusty piece of paper, but a vibrant, living map drawn in the very fabric of your cells. For decades, millions of people across North America have grown up hearing stories of a distant Cherokee ancestor, often described as a princess or a brave warrior who disappeared into the mist of history. These stories were passed down like sacred relics. But when modern commercial DNA testing arrived, many holders of these legends were shocked to see results that showed 0% Native American heritage. The collective disappointment was so massive that it sparked a scientific investigation unlike any other. A team of geneticists and historians decided to stop looking at general databases and started comparing old Cherokee skeletal remains and undisturbed burial DNA to the modern Native American genetic profiles we see in today's testing kits. What they uncovered was a genetic truth so complex, so deep, and so controversial that it suggests our current understanding of Native American ancestry has been fundamentally flawed for over a century. The truth wasn't just hidden. It was buried under layers of migration, adaptation, and a very specific type of genetic signature that modern tests were never designed to find. If you have ever questioned your roots or wondered why your DNA results don't match your grandmother's stories, you need to listen closely, because the history of the Cherokee people is being rewritten through a lens that science is only just beginning to comprehend. To understand why this scientific comparison caused such a stir, we have to talk about the concept of the genetic baseline. Most of us think that DNA testing is as simple as matching a puzzle piece to a picture. But in reality, it is a game of probability based on reference populations. For years, the reference populations used for Native Americans were taken from groups that had very little interaction with outside civilizations. But the Cherokee were different. Long before the forced relocations and the tragedies of the 19th century, the Cherokee were a massive, sprawling confederacy that occupied the southeastern United States. They were traders, diplomats, and innovators. This means their genetic makeup was dynamic even before European contact. When scientists began comparing the ancient Cherokee markers to the modern Native American profiles used by big testing companies, they realized that the companies were looking for a specific type of Asian-derived Siberian marker that represents only one part of the story. The Cherokee DNA showed a unique Mediterranean and West Eurasian influence that predates the arrival of any explorers we know in the history books. This isn't just a minor variation. It is an unprecedented gap that explains why so many people with genuine ties to the tribe are seeing white or European results on their tests. The truth is that the Cherokee genome carries markers that science previously categorized incorrectly, effectively burying the true ancestry of millions. This brings us to the mysterious haplogroup X. In the world of DNA research, haplogroup X is like a ghost in the machine. It is found in very low frequencies in Europe and the Middle East, but it appears with surprising density among certain Native American groups, most notably the Cherokee. When the scientists did the comparison, they found that the haplogroup X found in Cherokee remains was far older and more diverse than the versions found in Europe. This suggests that instead of being a sign of recent colonial mixing, this marker has been in North America for thousands of years. Yet, because modern DNA algorithms are programmed to see haplogroup X as European, they automatically strip away the Native American identity of anyone carrying it. This is a massive scientific blind spot. The researchers found that the Cherokee weren't just a single ethnic bloc. They were a diverse society that likely integrated travelers and migrants from the Atlantic long before our history books began. By comparing this old DNA to modern standards, the scientists realized that the modern tests are essentially erasing indigenous history because it doesn't fit a narrow, prehistoric model of migration. But wait, the story gets even more intense when we look at the internal displacement of the tribe. During the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee were uprooted from their ancestral lands in Georgia and the Carolinas and moved to Oklahoma. This wasn't just a physical move, it was a genetic bottleneck. Those who survived were the ones who carried the most resilient genetic traits, but they were also the ones who were most likely to have integrated with other cultures for survival. When the scientists looked at modern Cherokee descendants in Oklahoma versus those whose ancestors stayed in the mountains of North Carolina, the East Band, they found two completely different genetic trajectories. The Oklahoma group showed a higher degree of what we traditionally call native markers, while the North Carolina group retained more of those ancient, mysterious Eurasian signatures that the tribe had carried for millennia. The gap between these two groups is so wide that a modern DNA test might tell two full-blooded cousins that they are from two different continents. This is why the truth was always buried. We were looking for a single, uniform identity, and a people whose strength was always their ability to adapt and incorporate diversity. One of the most fascinating aspects of this research is the genetic silence. Scientists noticed that in many documented Cherokee families, the traditional Native American markers seem to jump generations or disappear entirely from the autosomal record. Autosomal DNA is what you get from 23andMe, or Ancestry, and it only tracks about 5 to 7 generations back with accuracy. Because the Cherokee were so heavily integrated into the early American frontier, their DNA was subjected to a literal washing out in the records. But when scientists looked at the non-recombining parts of the DNA, the Y chromosome and the mitochondrial DNA, the ancient Cherokee markers were still there, bright as a beacon. The comparison proved that while the percentage of native DNA might look like 0 on a pie chart, the direct ancestral line is often unbroken. The modern American testing system is based on percentages, but the Cherokee identity was always based on lineage. This conflict between math and history is where the truth was lost for over a century. Now let's talk about the genetic protector markers. During their deep dive, the researchers discovered that ancient Cherokee DNA contains a specific set of markers related to heart health and sugar metabolism that are unique to the southeastern forests. When they compared these to modern Native American populations in the West or Southwest, the signatures were completely different. It turns out the Cherokee had evolved a specialized biological response to the specific berries, plants, and climate of the Appalachians. Modern DNA tests often group all Native Americans into one big category, which is like grouping a person from Norway with someone from Italy and expecting their DNA to look identical. By burying the specific Cherokee environmental markers under a general indigenous label, scientists were missing the very thing that made the Cherokee a distinct civilization. The new study highlights that the Cherokee were biologically adapted to a specific landscape, and when they were moved, that adaptation became a genetic liability, leading to many of the health challenges we see today in descendant populations. This leads us to a concept that is shaking the foundations of American archaeology: the Atlantic connection. When the scientists compared the ancient Cherokee DNA to global databases, they found matches with ancient populations in the Canary Islands and the Berber regions of North Africa. This was a shock to everyone. It suggests that the Cherokee might be the descendants of an ancient seafaring culture that crossed the Atlantic thousands of years ago, long before the Vikings or Columbus. This would explain the Middle Eastern and Mediterranean markers that keep showing up in Cherokee DNA results, which were previously dismissed as noise or colonial mixing. The study suggests that these aren't errors. They are the buried truth of an ancient migration. The Cherokee weren't just native in the sense that they were always there. They were a global pioneer culture that made the Americas their home and guarded their unique heritage for thousands of years. Imagine being a person today who has a family Bible showing your great-great-grandmother was a full member of the Cherokee Nation, but your DNA test says you are 99% British and Irish. For years you were told your family story was a myth. But this new research says, keep that Bible. The scientists found that early Scottish and Irish traders who moved into Cherokee territory in the 1700s didn't just replace the Cherokee DNA, they merged with it. Because the Scots-Irish and the ancient Cherokee already shared some of those mysterious West Eurasian markers from ancient times, the modern DNA test cannot tell the difference. It sees the British signature and assumes that is where it all came from, ignoring the fact that half of that signature might be from a Cherokee ancestor whose markers looked British to a computer. The results didn't make sense because the software isn't smart enough to distinguish between a 17th century immigrant and a 5,000-year-old indigenous line that happens to share a distant ancestral root. The researchers also looked into the hidden freedman history. After the Civil War, many people of African descent who had lived within the Cherokee Nation were granted citizenship. Their DNA is a crucial part of the Cherokee story. When scientists compared these lines to modern databases, they found that the integration was so deep that a unique Cherokee African genetic signature had formed. This signature is found nowhere else in the world. It is a biological record of a shared struggle and a shared home. Yet, in the modern political climate of tribal enrollment, these genetic truths are often pushed aside. The study proves that the Cherokee Nation was never about purity. It was about a shared destiny. The DNA confirms that the tribe was a melting pot of the frontier, a place where different peoples became one under the laws of the Great Peace. But why was this truth buried so deep? The answer is partly political. In the early 20th century, The United States government used blood quantum to determine who was and wasn't Indian. This was a way to limit the number of people who could claim land or benefits. They wanted the Native American identity to eventually disappear through mixing. Science followed this lead, creating models of native DNA that were intentionally narrow. If you didn't fit the government's narrow definition of what a Native American should look like genetically, you were erased. This study is the first major step in reclaiming that erased history. By using ancient remains as the baseline, the scientists are bypassing a century of biased data and going straight to the source. They found that the Cherokee genome is much more elastic than the government ever wanted to admit. There's also the mound builder mystery. The Cherokee ancestors are often linked to the Great Platform mounds found throughout the South. Scientists took samples from burial sites near these mounds and found that the elite classes of the mound builder societies had a very specific genetic makeup that is almost identical to the high-heritage Cherokee families of today. This proves a direct biological link between the ancient American civilizations and the modern tribe. However, for a long time, historians tried to claim that the mounds were built by a lost race because they didn't want to believe that the Cherokee and their neighbors were capable of such engineering. The DNA has finally buried that lie. The Cherokee are the direct descendants of the architects of the American pyramids, and their DNA carries the complexity of a high civilization society. For those interested in DNA and genealogy, this research is a game changer because it introduces the idea of ancestral memory markers. These are parts of the genome that don't code for physical traits but seem to carry information about the environment. The scientists found that Cherokee DNA has a high concentration of these markers in regions of the brain associated with spatial navigation and long-term memory. This might suggest why oral tradition remains so accurate for so many centuries, despite the lack of a written language until Sequoia. The tribe's biology was geared toward the preservation of knowledge. When we look at a modern DNA test, we are only seeing the hardware. This study is starting to look at the software. Think about the implications for travelers and those who love history. When you visit the Smoky Mountains or the hills of Oklahoma, you aren't just looking at scenery. You are standing in a place where the air and the soil shaped the very DNA of a people. The scientists found that the Cherokee genome actually shifted slightly after the relocation to Oklahoma, showing signs of rapid adaptation to the new diet and environment. This proves that our DNA is not a static tombstone. It is a living document that is still being written. The truth of the Cherokee legacy is that they are a people of constant renewal. They didn't fade away. They evolved. One of the most emotional parts of the scientific report was the segment on lost children. During the boarding school era, thousands of Cherokee children were taken from their homes and had their names changed. Many never returned. Scientists are now using the ancient baseline to help the descendants of these lost children find their way back to the tribe. By identifying those specific Cherokee Eurasian or Southeast environmental markers, they can prove kinship even when there are no paper records. This is where science becomes a tool for healing. The truth that was buried for so long is now being used to reunite families and restore identities. The scientists also addressed the Cherokee princess phenomenon. While the idea of a princess is a European concept that didn't exist in Cherokee culture, they were a matrilineal society where women held power as beloved women. The DNA shows why the legend persists. Many of the women who married into the early colonial families were from high-ranking, elite lineages of the mound builder tradition. Their DNA was distinct and powerful, and they left a lasting impression on their descendants. The stories weren't made up. They were just translated into a language the descendants understood. The study confirms that these women were the carriers of a very prestigious and ancient genetic code that has survived against all odds. Another surprising result was the flora and fauna signature. Our DNA can sometimes show traces of the things our ancestors interacted with most. The researchers found that some Cherokee descendants carry a specific genetic mutation that makes them less sensitive to the oils and poison ivy and other southeastern forest plants. This is a clear sign of thousands of years of life in a specific forest canopy. If you live in a city today and you carry this marker, it is a buried truth of your ancestry that no British or Irish label can explain. You are literally built for the Appalachian woods. This level of detail is something modern commercial tests never even look for, but it is the key to understanding true heritage. As we move forward into a new era of genetic research, the Cherokee comparison will be a landmark study. It teaches us that to find the truth, we have to stop looking at what the world thinks a person should look like and start looking at what they actually are. The Cherokee people were a sophisticated, global, and highly adapted civilization. Their DNA reflects that complexity, and it finally explains why the standard tests have been failing them for so long. The results didn't make sense because the old science was too simple for a people as storied as the Cherokee. The scientists concluded their paper with a powerful statement: genetics is not a cage, but a window. The buried truth of the Cherokee is that they are still here, and they are in the blood of millions of people who were told they were nothing. If you have that family story, don't let a 0% result on a computer screen take it from you. Science is catching up to the truth, and the window is finally opening. The mystery of the Cherokee DNA isn't about proving you are Indian by a government standard. It is about understanding how your ancestors survived, how they loved across borders, and how they built a legacy that refused to be erased. The story of human migration is much older and more complex than we were taught in school. We are a species of travelers and survivors. The Cherokee comparison proves that North America was a hub of human innovation long before it was discovered. It reminds us that our DNA is a record of our resilience. Every unexplained marker in your results is a door to a past that someone, somewhere, tried to bury. But as the researchers found, the earth and the blood do not forget. The truth always finds its way back to the light. Think about what this means for the future of identity in America. We are moving away from a world of boxes and into a world of layers. You can be many things at once. You can be the descendant of a Scottish blacksmith and a Cherokee beloved woman. Your DNA will show both. But it will also show the unique way those two worlds created something entirely new. The Cherokee truth is the ultimate American story. A story of integration, survival, and a refusal to be defined by outsiders. For those listening who have spent years searching for their roots, let this be a message of hope. The tools are getting better. The databases are getting smarter. But the most important tool you have is your own history. The scientists had to go back to the ancient remains to find the truth, and you might have to go back to the old stories to find yours. The DNA is the proof, but the story is the life. The truth was always buried in the blood, and now that it's being uncovered, it's proving that the Cherokee legacy is more vast and more beautiful than we ever imagined. As we wrap up this deep dive, remember that you are a biological miracle. You are carrying a code that has survived for thousands of years through some of the most difficult times in human history. Whether you are Cherokee or from any other group, your DNA is a masterpiece of survival. The scientists have shown us that the truth can stay buried for a long time, but it can never be destroyed. It is waiting for the right moment and the right technology to speak again. The Cherokee comparison is just the beginning of a global awakening in how we see ourselves. Keep the legends alive. Keep asking the questions. Because when science and history finally meet, as they have in this study, the results are nothing short of revolutionary. The truth about the Cherokee is a truth about all of us, that we are more connected, more ancient, and more complex than we often realize. The journey into the DNA is the greatest travel documentary of all time, and the next discovery is just one sequence away. Don't let the simplified results of today discourage you from the profound reality of your heritage. The buried truth is finally rising, and it is a sight to behold. So the next time you hear a story about a hidden ancestor, or look at a map of the ancient mounds of the South, know that the science is finally starting to back up the memory. We are not just where we are now. We are everywhere our ancestors have been. The Cherokee DNA comparison is a bridge across time, and we are all lucky to be living in the moment when that bridge is finally being crossed. Listen to the blood, honor the elders, and keep exploring the fascinating, buried truths of our collective human map. The truth is out there, and it's written in you. This new understanding also challenges us to be better stewards of the land. If the Cherokee DNA was so closely tied to the specific plants and minerals of their home, we have to wonder what we are losing when those environments are destroyed. Our biology is a conversation with the world around us. By burying the truth of the Cherokee's environmental connection, we also buried the knowledge of how to live in balance with the land. Reclaiming this DNA is part of reclaiming that balance. The science is telling us that we aren't just visitors on this planet. We are part of it, and the indigenous wisdom of tribes like the Cherokee is literally encoded in their physical existence. The comparison between old and new has shown us that the gap is not a void, but a library. It is filled with the stories of survivors who had to hide their identity to stay safe, and migrants who brought ancient cultures to new shores. It is a library of the American spirit, The Cherokee truth is a light that is shining through the cracks of old, rigid scientific models. It is a reminder that the most important things in life aren't always easy to see, but they are always there, guiding us from the shadows of the past. Embrace the complexity. Honor the buried truth. And never forget that your DNA is the most incredible story ever told. As the fog lifts on our understanding of Native American heritage, we see a landscape that is far more populated and far more diverse than we were led to believe. The Cherokee Nation stands as a sentinel of that history. Their DNA is a testament to the fact that no matter how hard you try to bury the truth, the life force will always prevail. You are a part of that life force. You are the descendant of the people of the mounds, the people of the mountains, and the people of the Great Peace. That is a truth worth fighting for, and it is a truth that is finally, mercifully, free. Take this knowledge with you. Share it with those who have been looking for answers, and the next time you look in the mirror, see beyond the surface. See the ancient migrations, the mountain air, and the 1,000-year-old defense systems. You are the buried truth in motion. Let it empower you. Let it connect you to the history that was meant for you. The Cherokee comparison has given us the key. Now it's up to us to walk through the door and explore the world that was always waiting for us. The truth is no longer buried. It's alive, it's vibrant, and it's you.